Наступний наш доповідач Мykhailo Sokolovskyi розповість нам How do you assure your content edits and review flow? Дякую.
Okay. I see some people coming. Okay. Everyone who is interested will join us. So, hello everyone. Today I want to speak about the such topic as content edits and the review flow. Why do we need it? Why don't we want to simply publish everything? So, my name is Mykhailo. I am technical lead at the FFW agency. We're working with different kind of projects from small to big ones. And the issue we see on the bigger projects that their editorial flow can be complex. So why do we need some flow? It's just the content on the site. Why don't we let editors just simply go there and edit everything they want? Well, basically, I would highlight three things. First of all, we want to avoid some typos and other stupid mistakes that can be prevented very simply just if another person will check the content editor made. Second thing is prepare content in advance. That is really quite an often case. So pretend you are the customer, you're the company, and you have an advertisement campaign coming. Usually it's something scheduled, so you have a particular date when the whole new section of the site needs to be published. And you don't want your editors to sit over the night, fill in all the content to the site. So you want to have some kind of drafts prepared that you can simply go to the site and publish. And third thing, it's really depends on the sphere site belongs to. But for some themes, there can be some legal regulations. For example, it's medical sphere where usually there are overseeing organizations, and it's very important how your text is written, what's the images there, etc. So you want to have the tool for that as well. So why, if we need to have all this, why don't we use another tool? Why do we need it in our Drupal site, in our application? Because there are a lot of other things, a lot of tools where editors can prefill the content. They can share it with the organizations if they're need for a review. So why do we need it in our application? Well, first of all, it's one more tool to maintain. You, as an organization, have to think about another tool you have to maintain, you have to update it. There could be security issues with it. You have to train your editor that first of all you should go there, fill all your content there. You need to learn to teach your editors how to work with that tool. And then you need to copy and paste all that content from that tool to your application. And that's just double work. And it's really a waste of time. And another important thing I want to highlight is you don't see the final version. You don't see how your content will look on the site. Because, for example, with text processor Word, you can do whatever you want, but we know that web works a little bit differently, and you need to keep in mind mobile devices, tablets, and that brings some species to that. Okay, so considering that, you might want to have something integrated in your application. And you want to be able to create some drafts. You want to have an opportunity to preview how your content will look like before it's really getting published. Sometimes you want to split the responsibilities, so you want to have an editors that will create the new content, make some changes in existing, and you have, for example, dedicated person or team that doing the reviews of all this content before it's getting published. And maybe other things, it really depends on how your organization works. So what can Drupal propose in this case? I would highlight two major branches. The first is workflows or content moderation. It's the two modules that comes in Drupal core now. And the second thing I want to speak about is workspaces, as they recently became an experimental module in Drupal core. So let's try to see what this module have to propose us. So talking about workflows, what do we have there? I'm going to be a little bit technical here because we're on DrupalCamp, right? So each entity gets a state. State could be draft, could be needs review, and could be published. There could be more of these states in case your flow requires it. You have a transitions. Transition is basically configuration. Yeah, it's changing of the state, and you can configure from what state to what state this transition is possible. So, for example, in case you have draft, you cannot simply publish it. You need to send it to review, and only reviewer can set the state to published. So, and the third thing, which is really important, that you have the permissions. So you can configure which role has what transitions available. And actually, it already gives us a lot of opportunities, and it's already a good flow. It's much better than nothing. Just to highlight that it's two modules that work in pair, and currently it supports only block content and node, and just recently starting from Drupal 8.7 as menu link content and taxonomy term now are more like the real entities with revisions, because there was always some kind of special. You would also be able to manage these content types. And sorry? Well, yeah. I mean, that is just some basic highlights. Of course, if you have some custom entities, you can make it work with workflows. I'm just saying about the entity types that comes from Drupal core, and basically, these four entity types is the biggest part of your content. Most probably, it's like nodes and block content with menu and taxonomies covers really a lot of cases. So that's already good. We have a flow. But what if we can do a little bit more? What if we already have a tool in our developer's life that makes our work much easier, and we use it every day, actually. All of the developers, I believe, nowadays use it. It allows you to keep track changes. It has reviews. Multiple people can work in parallel. Is it something familiar to you guys? Yeah, that's Git. We all love it because it makes our life so much easier. So what is it about Git that we love? We have commits. So commits is the tool for versioning. We can change something and name the version. So we can track the changes. Basically, all our changes is code. We can track and we can give it a name. Second is branches. And that is the thing that provides us tools to work in parallel, for multiple people to work in parallel. Because we can create new branches, we can switch between them, we can pull the changes from one branch to another. We can compare the branches, so we can compare what are the changes made here and there. And finally, we can merge them and push it to the remote repository. And what if we could apply all the same things to Drupal? Because content is not so much different from the code, right? So, and that's actually what workspaces do. So we have commits, which are revisions in terms of Drupal, and we have, it's already out of the box. So why don't we add the little piece that will add the branches, which is basically what workspace is. So you can, once I say further in this presentation workspace, you can think about Git branch, because that's essentially what it stands for. And what if we add this tiny bit that will link the revision to the workspace, or as they say, commit to the branch? Because that's a part that currently not there, and that's also a part of the workspaces. And as we're using administrative UI, we want to provide the UI to be able to switch workspaces, to pull the changes, to see the difference, and to deploy. And as you see, it's highlighted with red. So that is the actions that comes with workspaces. So I would use these terms further. Tricky thing about workspaces currently is that there are two versions of it. First version exists for quite a long time now, and it's in contrib, so it's contrib modules, a few of them. And second part, which currently is in progress, is the core version. So the functionality that existed in the contrib now going into core, and I will speak more about it. So what are the contrib? I want to highlight that I would mostly speak about the contrib version now, because core version is in progress and it was introduced quite recently. So I will speak about the contrib. So it's a set of modules, 5 of them. It's multi-version, workspace, replication, deploy, and relaxed web services. And you see it's highlighted in different colors. You will later figure out why is it so. So multi-version brings then this relation between the revision and the workspace. Workspace actually provides the workspaces and the possibility to switch between them. And the replication modules provides more operations like update, see the changes, and the deploys. So this is hard dependencies between them. So you will need all the 3 modules in case you want to have it in your Drupal site. And deploy and relaxed web services, you would need these modules if you want to share content across the site, across the instances. So in case you only want to have one instance and have multiple branches in it, you will only need the first 3. If you want to have cross-instance replication, you would need to add 2 more and configure the connection. So I already mentioned the cross-instance replication. First of all, I need to give a little bit of explanation of what replication is. Historically, because operations are encapsulated in replication module, so the process of pushing the changes, comparing the changes, called replication. And you can use it multiple ways. You can think about your Drupal instances as the remotes in your Git. You can have your local and you can have your origin. So this is a scheme that gives you some understanding of it. So in each instance, you would have default workspace. And default workspace is something that would be shown to public. You can consider it as a master branch of your Git. So that's the branch that contains the content to be shown to anonymous users. And you can have multiple branches on each instance. Once you create the new branch, that's a difference between workspaces and Git. You will have it empty. So you will have no content inside it at all. And if you want to grab the content from the default workspace, you will need to trigger an update from the default. And that's the first arrow shows. So you create the workspace tree and you trigger the pull from the default. So your new branch will have all the same content as the master. And let's say you made some changes there. You can use external replicator to push this branch to another instance. But slightly different from Git. The workspace cannot be created by push itself. So in case you want to simply pass all the changes, all the content from workspace 3 to the same named workspace on another instance, you first will need to go to the second instance and create it there. Unfortunately. But then you can say, I want to push the content from the workspace 3 to the workspace 3 of another instance. Or you can say, I want to push the content from workspace 3 to the default workspace. So as with Git, you have an opportunity to choose the target. So actually, if we think about it, it's our feature branch flow we use every day as a developers. Each editor, when he wants to make some changes, he would create the new branch, do the changes that are needed. If it's needed, then the review flow happens, and only reviewer then can say, okay, these changes are fine, I want to merge it. In terms of workspaces, deploy to the default workspace or deploy to another instance if it's needed, once again. So how can we apply this to the live sites? What the approach should we choose there? Because we now have an options. We can have just one remote, the live site, where editors will create the new workspace when they need to edit something. It's all going to be reviewed inside this instance and then simply deployed back to the default workspace. Right? So it's like single instance setup. Another options we can have a separate environment where editors have an access to, where they would do all the same flow, but after the changes pushed to the master of the editorial environment, only after it we will push it to the production. What it can bring us, what the value of it is, you don't have any people that are accessing your production site. So you can close the login completely and your production site will be secure. You can not afraid of some data leaks, some password exposures, etc., because no one will be able to simply go to your production. Or you can have something more tricky than that. That's the example actually we used on one of our projects. There was a requirement to share the content across multiple markets. So we have a setup of site in English where all the same flow is happening, but for one difference. Let's say they have an advertisement campaign and they create the separate workspace for it where they fill all the content. And this advertisement campaign usually happens across multiple markets simultaneously with the same date of launch. The content is pretty same. The only difference is that it should be translated. So what flow we used in this case? You can create the new branch on the English site. You fill the content there. And then you create workspaces for the same campaign on your, in this example, Denmark and Sweden market. And first you deploy this content to the separate branches. You can translate it with no rush because nobody sees it. And then you can publish it. Cool, isn't it? Yes, but let's see how it looks in Drupal. So that's a screenshot of one of the sites. If you have proper permissions, I'm an admin role here. You will have this actions in the top right corner where you would be able to see the changes, to switch between workspaces, and to trigger update. And you see the list of the workspaces available on the left. So it's like just a tab which pops up. And here is the screenshots of creation of the new workspace and pulling the content. And as you may see, it's already, some of you may notice some issues with it. This form for editors can be pretty complex. So if you're an editor, sometimes you will not understand all these things because you're not a technical guy and you have to choose some kind of targets. There are some replication settings, some filters, and then you have to remember to pull the content because when you create the new workspace, you have nothing in it, which can be confusing. And after you've done the changes, if you're an editor or if you're approver of the content, you will need to trigger the deploy. And that's pretty simple form. You just, like a pull request in GitHub, you will name it somehow. You can add some description to it. And one thing you might already notice is this red line that says you have some kind of conflicts. What is that? Why is it happening? I just added some pages. What should I do? Well, the thing is, as in Git, you can have conflicts. You can have the conflicts when another person edited the same page as you did. And of course, system is not that smart to resolve this conflict properly. So you have an option. Unlikely with Git, you don't have a three-way merge because it would be pretty complex to implement in terms of Drupal entities because not all of your content is text. You can have images, you can have videos, you can have many other things. And so the system is not that smart to resolve all those conflicts, but you will see the message that there are conflicts. And you have two options. You have an options to not push the content that has conflicts. So it will save the version that's already published. Or you can say, rewrite the content there and push my changes. And that is where actually the convention plays big role. You have to train your editors and publishers how to properly work with it. You have to train your editors that if they see this message, they should click the link that shows where the conflicts are and compare the content, and maybe they will need to make changes in their branch to reflect those changes and then override the content with their version because it already has the edits that were already published. And after you publishing, after you trigger in pull or deploy, it's all queued, so it's all runs in the background. So that's just a simple list of the queue that represent the current state. So as you can see, deploy is now queued. So that's the place where you can monitor it. So let's try to see what we have and compare by some of the marks I would consider as important. So let's see what we have. We have criteria tracking the changes. Both workflows and workspaces work with revisions, so each change is tracked. That's good. Review. workspace are great in these terms because you have the whole separate branch where you can do everything you want, and you can see the full picture. When I say in the full picture, I mean if you have related entities, you have menu links, everything is there. So when you go to the page, you see how exactly it will look when it's published. In case of workflows, it's not that good because when you have related entities, not the latest revisions are shown by default. It was not possible to have menu links not published at all till the Drupal 8.7. You can solve some of these problems, like with related entities, but it's not coming out of the box and you will have to struggle with it pretty a lot. Parallel. What is parallel? Well, everything goes good in terms of multiple people working in parallel, unless you need to make some urgent changes. With workflows, it's pretty much impossible to do. Because let's say you have a page and our editor already started his work on some edits, changing it, and then all of a sudden you need to change, for example, one line, which is for copyright line. And you already have the revision that has a lot of changes, and you cannot bypass it. So there's no way to create the new change starting from the version that's already published. It's impossible. You need to revert all these content changes, change the one line, publish it, and then make all the changes again. So it's like very frustrating. You don't have this issue with workspaces because you have a separate branch. If you need some urgent change to go live, you can simply create another branch, make this change there, quickly review it and publish, and then just reflect this change in your branch that is in progress. Complexity. As I mentioned, UI is not ideal, UX is not ideal. There is a lot of things that editors will have to learn to work with this tool. Workflows are pretty straightforward. And last but not least is performance. Because of the way these tools are built, workflows are much faster because it's just single state of the entity. You don't have to worry about everything else. Workspaces have to deal with a lot of things like comparing the branches, pulling the content to the separate branch, deploying this content, and so on, so on, so on. So it's not that good. It's slower. But with its benefits. So what is the conclusion, you would ask me? I would say Workspaces is a great tool that can bring a lot of opportunities to your editorial flow, but you should use it wisely. Like the glow with infinity stones, you have an option to be Thanos or Tony Stark. And we have 5 minutes for questions.
So first of all, thank you for your English.
You're welcome.
It was perfect. Then the first question is about the workspaces. Can you tell us what is the transport layer? So how the different environments are connected to each other? So do they use the REST API or another protocol?
It's REST API.
Yeah?
It's REST API, and you saw the Relaxed module, which extends the REST API with some. Sorry? Yes.
And yeah.
In general, about Buggy, we have a project that works for almost a year or even more. No, it's like notes with paragraphs, with media, with files, many links. We even with custom entities. It's all possible. As with workflows, you can also implement a few things to make your custom entity work with workflows. In simple case, it would be just if your entity is revisionable, it will work with workspaces. In case you have some special logic behind it as well, probably you will need to do something more.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is how you teach the editors of this Git model, because it's very hard to teach the newbie developers to understand this model, and the editors are usually not the technical-minded person. So how you teach the editors?
That's a good point, actually, and that's a problem, really. The UI is complex in some places, and it takes time, really. Time and mistakes with editorial flows.
Okay, and if you just need to make some changes, so if there is only one editor on your website and you don't have to parallel the work, would you suggest to just use the workspaces, or it's better to use the simpler model?
My personal opinion, I would use simpler model. I would go with workflows because workspaces would look like an overkill for really small projects.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to add something. I wanted to say that all these modules in Contrib, workspaces in Contrib, depend on multiversion. And this is the module that make possible to replicate content between environments. In this module, entities are made revisionable. And at that level, we have the issues that people think are in a relaxed module, but they actually are at the multiversion level, where different issues like entity references should be handled, and maybe if you have a custom entity type, you have to make it revisionable first, because custom entity type is not always compatible with multiversion, and in that case you cannot replicate it. So you should make it compatible with the multiversion, then you'll be able to do all this stuff.
Yeah, and by the way, if somebody's interested in the Contrib modules, we have Andrei here, who is the maintainer of these modules. So you can catch him.
Do you have any experience with other models, the same functionality, like workflows? It's one Contrib, not workflow in core app, but workflows, and other module, state machine.
I haven't heard about state machine, to be honest.
This model used by Drupal Commerce.
Okay.
It's more complex way to use like workflows, really complex workflows with different fires of events and so on.
Okay, thank you. I'm also learning something new today.
Okay. Is it a way to roll back changes like git reset hard? From what I see, just delete workspace and create a new one and just update from remote. Or there is a better way?
It's delete a branch is always a solution. To roll back the changes, there is always a revertive revision, but as far as I remember, there were some issues with it sometimes.
Workspace level. It doesn't work at workspace level if you want to revert what you replicated already to an workspace.
Okay, guys, we're running out of time. You can catch me and Andrei if you want afterwards. Don't hesitate to evaluate the session, your feedback. I would really appreciate your feedback. And thank you all for coming.
Дякую дуже. Ми вам дуже дякуємо.